Would you shut down the government again?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens on February 15th. And
you're not taking it off the table?
Well, I don't take anything off the table. I don't like to take things off the table. It's that alternative. It's national emergency. It's other things. And, you know, there have been plenty national emergencies called. And this really is an invasion of our country by human traffickers.
That was the president leaving his options open when it comes to border wall funding, a topic that will surely be front and center at tomorrow's State of the Union address. While Trump tries to garner support for a crisis that doesn't exist, he probably won't be discussing the real crisis. According to a new court filing, an official at the Department of Health and Human Services said that finding all of the migrant children separated by the Trump administration since the summer of 2017 may be logistically impossible. Quote, even if performing the analysis plaintiffs seek, which is the ACLU trying to identify additional separated children, were within the realm of the possible, it would substantially imperil the Office of Refugee Resettlement's ability to perform its core functions without significant increases in appropriations from Congress and a rapid, dramatic expansion. The ACLU weighed in, quote, this response is a shocking concession that the government can't easily find thousands of children it ripped from parents and doesn't even think it worth the time to locate each of them. AB, what is happening?
I mean, this whole unraveling of the detention policy and how intentional it was to produce trauma and to scare people across our border from not coming here and seeking asylum status is unbelievable. But even just to see that is really hard to believe, that now that they've been traumatized once, they shouldn't be. They're saying it's too traumatizing. First of all, they can't find them. They don't have a system for finding them and relocating them. It's not even worth it because it wouldn't be good for their welfare if they were to be reunited with their parents. It's just amazing. But watching this last couple of days and the conversations that are going on in Capitol Hill about the State of the Union, how he'll get out of this corner he's painted himself into. He's not going to shut the government down again. He likes to be dramatic, and he wants us to watch the TV show, and he likes suspense, but he's not going to do it. He knows how bad it was. But he's truly on an island now because of this idea of an emergency declaration, because the senators, by simple majority vote, as I understand it, will be voting with the Democrats, enough of them that it will be either the approval of it will be defeated or the declaration will be rejected. But whatever vote is forced by this law that will come over from the House will embarrass him, and it will be a huge defection on the Republican side. I don't know what he's going to do to get out of this jam.
Let me just underscore that. So there's some Washington Post reporting along the same lines of which you just reported, that Mitch McConnell tried to warn him of just
last
what you
Tuesday,
laid out.
in executive time.
That at least six, exactly, the secret executive, that at least, I think, 6 to 8 Republican senators were not going to support the declaration on a variety of reasons, some philosophical, some policy.
All valid. I mean, you're setting a precedent for the next Democratic president to come in and say everything's an emergency, climate change on down. It's a separation of powers. It's a separation of powers issue. The Congress has the power of the purse. I mean, for many reasons, Republicans don't want to be on the record supporting this to get him out of a political emergency.
And I think your point is they don't want to see it used for policy making. And I think the Republicans that I've seen who are against it, runs the gamut from people who, and actually it's more House members who oppose the policy itself, and then Republicans who oppose the tactic.
The child separation policy is a racist policy, and I think it's a stain on this nation. And the cruelty of it, to quote Adam Serwer of The Atlantic, is the point of it. The reason why we're not up in arms is because these children are not white. And the fact that they separated these children from their parents and had no intention of reuniting them or tracking them in any way shows that that wasn't even a thought that they had, that they might need to reunite these kids because they didn't care enough to think that through. Additionally, I think the reason why there aren't massive protests is because these children aren't white. And that makes me sad every single day, because these children should be protected no matter who they are. And putting them into cages is something that I think all Americans should remember every single day when we watch this president. As ridiculous as he is, he's lying, he's saying crazy things, and sometimes he can be even entertaining, right? Because it's so ridiculous. But we must remember that the policies that he is implementing are cruel unnecessarily, and it's hurting communities of color. And we all have to, that's a burden that we all share as citizens. He's doing this in our name.
But I don't disagree with you, but the outcry has been, I remember Laura Bush came out and said this is reminiscent of the ugliest chapter, one of the ugliest chapters of Japanese internment camps. So why isn't there any pressure among Republicans? I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said, but why doesn't anything happen?
Because the children are not white. I really think that's
they're babies.
I know, but I think that in this country, you know, Black Lives Matter is a hashtag because it's an implicit "to" on the end of that. That Black Lives matter just as much as all other lives. Not that white lives don't matter, right? You know, people would respond and say, well, all lives matter. Well, if that were true, we would all be storming the Capitol because these children matter just as much as every other child. And I think that, you know, as a person of color and somebody who thinks about these issues a lot, I think it's very uncomfortable for us to think about the fact that we're not all protesting and we're not all storming the Capitol when you see a 17-month-old child be reunited with her mother after being separated for a month, and the wails and almost the resentment that was shown in that video of the baby, you know, feeling like, how could you leave me, Mom? I mean, those are the types of images that 40 years from now we're going to be looking back at with shame.
And there's no doubt that a baby, I have one, has no idea why, apparently. So the trauma is real. It's been imparted on these babies by the U.S. government, led by Donald Trump.
And the cynicism of using these children as political instruments, as pawns to do something that, again, is not even a national emergency. But the whole point behind this program, the family separation, was to, if we get kids, if we put them in cages, that will deter their parents from coming. That's immoral. It's cynical. It's politics at its worst.
Real quick.
When we were covering the child separation policy as it first unfolded, one thing that many lawyers who were representing the parents of these children told me was that they didn't think some of the kids would ever get back together with their parents. And at the time, I remember just being stunned to hear that. And now looking back, a lot of that's really been borne out.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.